we have a country with 220 million people where football is lived in an extremely passionate way, where there is a gambling tradition up to a certain extent, and it becomes a very, very attractive market.
You're listening to 15-Minute Mastery, a show that empowers you with insights from leading iGaming experts to enhance your personal or business performance. The show is brought to you by the AI-powered data analytics platform Blask and supported by tech-driven affiliate and media company Already Media, Lala Stars, the leading casino partnership program, and Next.io, the world's iGaming community. Hey everyone, and welcome back to 15-Minute Mastery. Joining me today is a very special guest. He's Pablo Ferreira, a brilliant iGaming veteran with 21 years of experience leading some of the industry's biggest companies. Pablo is an amazing marketer with a wealth of knowledge on entering new markets and with a very unique insight into Brazilian market. For me, this is a personally special episode because Pablo has recently joined us as the CMO in a secret project that will be revealing very soon. Welcome, Pablo.
Hi, Dimitri. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So let's go straight to the questions. So Brazilian market is probably one of the hottest markets in the world right now. Everyone is talking about it. So I feel like hearing your perspective on many things will be very useful. So the first question is, what factors have contributed to the recent surge in interest in the Brazilian online gambling market?
Right. Okay. So let me start by adding that my perspective is from someone that has worked in the Brazilian market for many years. I am not Brazilian. I have lived close by for a while, but it's an outsider perspective with knowledge of the local industry who has been following the market for many years. Regarding your question about the factors, I think first of all let's look at the macros. Okay, we have a country with 220 million people where football is lived in an extremely passionate way, where there is a gambling tradition up to a certain extent, and it becomes a very, very attractive market. If we look at the numbers for the regulator application for the licenses at this point today, we have 183 companies. I believe it is on the latest count. Each one of them has a license. It's allowed 3 different brands. So we're looking at about 600 brands, close to that. I don't think that there has been any instance before where from one day to the next we can have 600 licensed brands operating on a market. Okay, so this is the macro scale of the impact of the Brazilian market or the interest in the Brazilian market. On a smaller scale, we have seen, I've seen that the Brazilian market being worked as a subsidy was a little bit hush-hush, risky, then start showing up on annual reports of companies, then becoming something very wide that everybody knows about and everybody wants to get into. So there's a key date and a key factor of 2018 when there was some regulatory decisions that lead to a lot more openness in the market and has led over the last few years to an explosion of brands, to a much more visible visibility of the brands on television, on sponsorship, etc. Okay. And then lastly, for those that knew something about the market a few years ago, one of the biggest factors is the payment method, where we went from a very rudimentary payment method that was the norm in Brazil, which was related to Pix, which is easily world-class, adapted by everyone, safe for the operator, safe for the user, and it has allowed for the expansion of iGaming in a way that maybe we wouldn't have thought about before the implementation. Okay.
Yeah, I think like in my book, Pix was probably one of the largest impacts on the market because I remember operating there myself, and like as you mentioned, Boleto was insanely outdated. And I was looking at some of the Blast data the guys shared about the growth of the Brazilian market in the last few years, and the market exploded by almost 10x since the moment when the Pix was released. So it's really, really crazy in terms of the numbers.
It's correct. And there's another trend that we see in a number of Latin American markets. The something that we see is that the usage of this payment method grew a lot during the pandemic, which, for very obvious reasons, and it became the norm. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I think one of the hottest topic is regulation, and
Yeah.
probably like someone who's seen a lot of regulatory frameworks before. I think this is where Brazilian market looks very, very, very tough. So how do you think the current regulatory landscape in Brazil is actually affecting the online gambling industry?
Well, as a whole, I think that it puts it front and center, and it makes it legitimate. It forces all the involved parties to adhere to a set of rules and regulations that are very common and widely accepted nowadays. But if we don't have them, we're going to see issues as RG and stuff like that being taken more of a liberal approach, so to speak. So now it's guaranteed that the players are protected, that the brand can operate regularly. There's not a risk and a liability for the brand. The risk is diminished for the users, etc., etc. Okay. At the same time, it allowed for foreign operators to invest in the country, which is also something very, very relevant and very important.
Yeah, true. I agree with you. So I think, Brazil as the market kind of closes everyone else's eyes on the rest of the Latin America, which is also like I think like a very promising set of markets with a very interesting like a cultural footprint and with a very interesting sports kind of scenarios. So if you can just like little compare Brazilian online gambling market to the other emerging markets in Latin America, what kind of differences or similarities you might see there?
Well, I think that the markets in Latin America, they're not. Each market has its own unique set of characteristics. I mean, if we look at the Brazilian market by size, maybe the next market that follows is the Mexican market, but there it's a completely different scenario from the point of view of payment methods. From the point of view, there's two players that basically have a very dominant position in the market. The sports are not the same. Mexico is split into north and south, so everything. It's a different approach. It's not like the lessons that we learned in Brazil. We could just grab them and implement them in Mexico. It's not as simple. The other regulated market in the region at this point is Colombia, which is also has its own set of very specific issues. And then there's Argentina, also regulated at this point, but in certain regions and it needs a certain corporate structure to go in. It needs a local joint venture, etc. And let's not forget that Argentina is going through a rough time or a tricky time economically speaking, and companies that need to enter need to take a unique approach to that market. Okay, so all in all, they all have massive potential, and the potential is very well seen when we consider that about of five markets, if we include also Peru and Chile, have the same amount of people as the European Union. Okay, so the population that you reach is pretty close to being the same, but it's just five markets where you can understand the synergies and you can understand how simpler it is to approach a market of the size of Mexico, for instance, instead of two, three, four European markets.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think, this is, I mean, probably even like the last 2 or 3 years, and probably this one specifically is where everyone started looking at Latin America more seriously. And, the population and economic growth is one of these factors. Okay, so next one is probably one of my favorite questions because I've been through this a lot in the past, and being the operator, like as you mentioned, from the outside, from like Europe, entering these markets, you always treated as the outsider, as the foreigner, right? So I think Brazil is one of the strongest examples of this rule. And I wanted to hear your thoughts, as someone, like, as you mentioned, also coming from the outsider perspective and, working on one of the largest companies in the region, like what kind of challenges and opportunities do foreign operators face when entering the Brazilian market?
So the challenge is that it's a completely different country and it's different in many aspects. Some of them are not too obvious, but we start with the language, and there's operators that when they see Portuguese, they think like, well, we can hire someone in Portugal and approach Brazil. No, this is not happening. For all intended purposes, the Brazilian Portuguese and the Portuguese speaking the Portuguese they speak in Portugal, Angola, Mozambique are completely different languages. So there's no synergies there at all, zero. To let's go with the football. The football is the main sport in Brazil. Is the sport that generates a higher GGR for just about any brand. But the off season, the championship, the whole approach is different in Brazil. The off season is from December until March, even though you have the state championships that start at the very end of January or even the start of February. And then you have two championships, the state ones that start on those days that I just mentioned and end up, depending on the year, middle of April, middle of May. And then the national championship that starts from that point on, and it goes until the first week of December. If you add that championship, things like the Libertadores or the Sudamericana, then what you get is that the Brazilian football teams have a lot of matches during the year, far more than the European teams, and therefore need more players. If a Brazilian team is playing in Colombia, it's not like they jump on a plane and fly for 2-3 hours. They maybe fly for 8 hours. So it's a whole day traveling. So what Brazilian teams do is that they really look at their teams. They really look at their championship, where they want to score, and they have A team and a B team, and they select which team wants to play. So if you're a trader and you know which players are playing, whether they're a B team or A team, you know that the odds can change very widely from one match to another one. Okay, team that is on paper is favorite if you just look at the team name, which is what happens in Europe. In Brazil becomes something else. So this is to that point. Then we mentioned already the payment methods are different. The TV landscape is insane. Again, it's a country with 220 million, so it becomes a far more complex approach. Every media that you want to go for is different. And then there's unique player behaviors. We mentioned picks again, but one player behavior that I've seen is players that deposit in the morning, on the afternoon, they place their bets. At the end of the day, get the money to go out with friends for a beer or for dinner, whatever, to the point that I believe it was Betano that had a TV spot based around this exactly. So there are player behaviors that are not so common in other markets. Okay.
Yeah, I love it. I think I really like the way you kind of looked at it from the perspective of so many different angles. Because usually, when I think about it, it's more about, mentality of, working with, different culture in terms of the product localization kind of a perspective. I really like what you just mentioned, because I think it opens like a whole new range of challenges, which you've seen in your career. And I think this is very valuable for everyone listening to this episode to add a little new set of challenges to the already existing set of challenges of their companies.
Yeah, look, it goes back sometimes to basics. I was watching an online discussion about why the Euro wasn't as followed in Brazil, and I was looking at the matches being discussed and figure out, okay, those matches were taking place at 5 or something like that in the afternoon in Germany, which is 1 or 2 p.m. in Brazil. So obviously, you're not going to have the same amount of players assisting. They're working or doing something else. It's not happening. On top of that, it's not Brazil playing because this coincided with the Copa America. So and there's like you mentioned angles. There's so many other things that are unique to Brazil that we could spend a whole hour discussing them and probably wouldn't even start to scratch the surface.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like even sometimes looking at Brazil is the country of many countries, is the country of many cultures and many different user behavioral patterns. So I think this is a very special market, and a challenge for a company coming from the outside is tough as ever. Comparing this to like European markets, like as you mentioned, where the whole Europe could be even the size, and the amount of people could be like the whole Brazil. So I really enjoyed our chat, Pablo. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your insights. It was very fun to hear and interesting to understand your perspective on things. Thanks for joining us, and to everyone watching, please like, comment, subscribe, and catch more episodes like this in the future.
Thank you for having me, Dimitri.
Cheers. Thank you.